Alright, my name is David Spencer, and this is my partner right here, Joseph, and I'm going to be teaching him today how to do a straddle jump in gymnastics. The straddle jump is an introductory skill in gymnastic jumping. It's for beginners, and it can be repeated over several times. So we'll be doing stretches, drills, and maybe a few other activities to help him familiarize himself with the movement. Alrighty, so now the first thing we're going to do before we actually get into the straddle jump itself is we're going to be doing some stretches out here. The reason we want to do stretches is because if you do any physical movement that requires you to jump, run, jog, or anything like that, you are at risk of having a tear in a muscle, a ligament, or a tissue. We want to avoid that for myself and my partner Joseph, who will be here in a second. Alrighty, I have Joseph right here. The first thing we're going to want to do, like I said previously, is we're going to want to stretch so there's no injuries or tears or anything in his tissues or ligaments. So what we're having him do is lean to the right, getting his muscles more stretched out and more loose so he doesn't injure himself. We doing good over here, Joseph?
Yes, sir.
Good, good. Down the middle. He's continuing to stretch right now as we speak. We definitely don't want to overstretch. We also don't want to understretch so that he is not hurt. We're going to have him go down. He's going to touch his toes, of course. Now, here in a second, he's going to cross over and do this before he goes into his next stretches. How are we feeling, Joseph?
Feeling good.
That's good. You ready to do some jumps today?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right, we're almost done with our stretches here. Joseph now is going to be doing some stretches on the ground. Still, we're in stationary position. He's touching his toes. All right, Joseph, there we go. Bring him closer to you. Nice, nice. And like I said, this may seem a little redundant, this may seem a little repetitive, but the last thing we want to do is have anybody getting hurt on Coach Spencer's dime here. So, Alrighty, now since we got through our stretches, Joseph's ready to go, I'm ready to go. Now what we're going to do is do like a little activity that'll help us produce more power in our jump when we actually need to do it the complete way. So what I'm going to have Joseph do is he's going to stand here, we're going to have our feet together, and we're going to reach and jump high. Of course, the straddle jump requires you to, jump high, also extend your legs outward, but we're going to do this first and then combine the movements since it's more of a complex movement. We're going to break it down into pieces for this first drill. So let's see it, Joseph. Nice. Do it a few more times. Okay. Perfect. One thing that we could try to do, Joseph, is make sure that our feet are a little closer together. A lot of times when you're doing a movement that requires you to have shoulder width apart or whatever, they always say that for like basketball, football, softball, for different sports. But for this, we want our feet together. Don't know why, but that's what they like to do, I like to say. And also, let's also try to get more height on our jump so that whenever it's time to make the movement a whole movement, we'll be able to get higher. So this is perfect. Fantastic. Perfect. Let's do this one more time. One more. Sweet. Okay, so like we talked about in class, there are multiple phases that we have to break down before we can actually complete a skill. So first, for the preparation phase, what we're going to have Joseph do, like we mentioned before, is we're going to have his feet close together. We're going to have his head high, facing forward, and we're going to have his hands posterior to his ears, which means above his ears. And that's how we're going to start. So this is what he needs to be like before he actually makes the jump, before he goes into the next phase, which will be the execution phase. So like I said, his feet are together, his hands are straight. Now he's ready to transition to the next phase. Alrighty, now we are in the execution phase of the drill. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty where we're going to be actually performing it and improving and see what we can do. First thing that we're going to do, like I said, we already established what happens during the beginning phases of him having his feet together, of having his hands high. Now he's officially going to make the transition into other movements, which are going to be having his arms and legs abducted away from himself, which means during the jump, have his arms and legs parallel sideways, essentially. Where one leg will be this way, one leg will be this way, and the arms will be this way. We will also be looking for his head to be still straight upon the jump. We don't want his head to move. We want to keep it forward in the middle. And also that his torso remains straight throughout the jump. We're going to have Joseph do this really quickly, and if he does great, great. If not, we will, see what we can do better. See you, Joseph. Nice. That was good. Does it feel? Is it anything like you got better though?
Yeah, I feel like I could not bend my back as much.
Okay. So now, I guess remember that is kind of maintain your posture. You know what I mean? And also just try to make it not so robotic-y. Kind of just like, I know it's easier said than done, obviously. But kind of making the transition from one movement to the next a little bit smooth. So let's see. Good. I noticed that when you went, like you jumped, like you made like two motions before you jumped. You were kind of just from like this and then jump. So it's kind of just like starting. Obviously you gotta kind of have like a little bit of a bend, but I'm just kind of making it more smooth. So let's see this. We can do this again. It was better than the first one there, so we're making progress. Nice. Alrighty. So now we went to the next phase. But since Joseph somewhat kind of struggled, it's a new movement for him, not that he was horrible at it, we're going to go back and work on our straight jumps. The reason we want to go back on our straight jumps is because one thing that I saw that Joseph could have done better was keeping his back straight, keeping his head forward, and maybe just being a little more parallel when he jumps. So what we're going to do is take a step back again and work on keeping his back straight and his head up by doing our straight jump activity that we did in the beginning. So here we go. Nice, there you go, Joseph. That'll let it remain straight. Eyes up, head forward. Good. That's good. We're keeping our feet together. I like to see that. Nice. Does this feel better than it did last time? Okay, that's good. We're gonna try it a few more times. Nice. Good. Come on. Perfect. Make sure that we don't bend our butt too much. We can kind of keep it as solid as we can. And one way that can help with that is having like maybe a slight bend forward before you actually jump. So you're saving yourself a little bit of time with not having to do this. But if you're slightly extended over your stomach, you kind of just keep your butt not so extended. There we go, perfect. And you got a little higher. Nice. Alrighty, now we're back. We're here at the execution phase where we are going to see if Joseph has learned from some of the progressions or what we did prior in the standing jumping. Like Joseph, like I said before, what we want to remember is we want to have our arms and legs away from each other, as they obviously touching each other, but parallel, as in like you're trying to touch your legs with your hands. We also want to have our head straight, we want to have our eyes forward, and we don't want to have our back compromise our jump completely. Like I said, it was very important that when you combine the movements that we kind of are, chest over our waist a little bit. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
All right, let's see it. There you go. Good. That's probably the best one. Yeah. Nice. Good. Perfect. Let's do it a few more times. I don't want to, There we go. I guess first, everything was splendid, a lot better than we did the last time. I guess the straight jumps could have helped with that. The only thing that I would recommend would be, just to kind of like, before we jump, not do too much of this, kind of using our legs to go up there. I know the butt is a big part of our lower body and creates a lot of the power, but we're gonna make sure we're using a lot more legs than we are using. So that'd be good. Alrighty, now we're getting to our final phase, which would be the landing phase / the recovery follow-through phase. It's very important, especially in gymnastics, that you brace yourself properly for landing or you will mess up your knee. There are more knee injuries in gymnastics than essentially any other sport. So it's very important to remember that when you land, you kind of land and bend your knees as you land. You don't want to jump and then land like this and land straight, because if you're actually doing real gymnastics and you land with your feet straight, you're no telling what can actually happen. Also, whenever we land, we want to make sure that our spine remains straight and that we don't have it crooked or we have it sideways, so on and so forth. Because if you land like on a trampoline and your spine is kind of misconstrued, that could cause a whole lot of expensive issues, and will also maybe ruin your career if you're a gymnast. We don't want to have any arch present in our back. Like I said, the spine and the back, are different things, but they're a part of each other, so they need to be both aligned correctly. And also, we need to have our arms extended, I guess, out in front. And we also need to have our feet shoulder width apart instead of having them close together, because obviously we want our feet close together in the beginning parts of the jump, but to realistically land like this on a trampoline or on a bar, you're asking for leg problems and other bodily problems. Alrighty, now we're going to be doing our follow-through recovery / landing phase, which is very important for the health of the person who's actually doing it, because there's a lot of injuries associated with not doing it correctly. So we just went over that previously. I'm going to be looking for a few things for Joseph to be doing to ensure that he's doing it correctly and staying as safe as possible. Do you think you're ready, Joseph?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty, let's see it. Nice. Actually, wait, do it again. I think I might have saw some. I want to see you do it again. Okay, not too bad. I see that you're wanting to bend your knees. You've got a little bit of the bend in there, but we want to make sure that we almost sort of like exaggerate the bend in our knees. This will help you transition to the next movement. There's a series of movements that you need to complete, and also this will help you preserve your knees, because knee injuries are very common in the gymnastics world. So let's see this again. I'm gonna look at your knees this time, and then after we see if we can improve on that, I'll look at a few other things. Perfect. That was actually perfect. It was a great exaggeration. I'm gonna see it again. It was almost fantastic. Fabulous. Okay, good. We want to make sure, one thing I did notice is, I know you're a beginner, I know it's very hard, I can't do it, I can explain it, but I can't do it, is that we want to keep our back and spine as straight as possible when we do land. I noticed that when you came down, it seemed like you were a little forward, and maybe your back or spine could have been aligned straighter. And it's like, obviously out here it's not a big deal, but if we ever transition to a trampoline, we want to make sure that you are as safe as possible. So let's see if we can keep your back and your spine straight. Perfect, that's exactly right. Your back stayed north and south the whole time. And let's say we see some improvement. Let's see it one more time. Let's see, make sure it wasn't a mistake. Absolutely tremendous. Alrighty, so now we're about to work our way into our conclusion. But before we do that, we're gonna go over the recovery phase. The recovery phase is very different compared to, in regard to what skill it's associated with. So the recovery phase for a straddle jump is very similar to what we did previously, which was the landing phase, so on and so forth. So for the recovery phase, ultimately what you're trying to do is prepare yourself for the next movement. So Joseph, what that means is, after you jump like that and you land, what you're going to be doing is preparing yourself for the next movement, which is basically bring your body back to where it was before you actually started the jump, which will be feet together. After, of course, you have your knees bent and land appropriately so you don't break anything or mess anything up. You want to bring yourself back to that position. So that's pretty simple. I'm sure you'll get that the first couple times to see if you can do that. Perfect. That's exactly. We don't have to do any more conversing about that. That was perfect. You brought yourself back to the eating point. That's extremely important in the recovery phase, because not all the time does like a skill end and you just got to stop and do it. As you get more skilled and as you become better at it, you got to add more things onto it. So that is perfect. Which brings me finally into our conclusion today. Today we learned how to do a straddle jump. We broke it down into the beginning, middle, and end phases, which were the execution phase, the follow-through phase, the setup phase, and eventually into the recovery phase. And all these are very, very important into actually appropriately executing the skill, because if you don't do one right, that's going to throw off the whole process. So if you don't land right, you could be hurt. If you don't do the correct beginning phases, you're going to compromise the rest of the phases that you need in order to make the skill correct. So, is there anything that you learned how to do today, Joseph?
Learn how to do the straddle jump.
All right, perfect. Thank you.